I'm going to demonstrate setting up a point of view in axonometric and perspective and saving out JPEG images so we can share our ideas and our models with other people on the team. So I'm going to do this with just the gray, and we'll keep this in the shaded mode. I took the labels off and things like that, so we don't really need to look at that at this point. Just want to show these shapes. So right now we are in full screen mode. We need to set up our image options. So under display, come down to the very bottom and go to image options. And right now at the top, you can see it's set to window size, and it gives us our pixel dimensions. That's just our working space. We want to go to a custom size. We're going to set up it's basically our paper size, the size of the image. And in that, we're also going to set up the point of view. So it's like if you imagine having a model in front of you and a camera and some lights, you're going to pick your point of view about how you're going to look at your object to photograph it. And then you're going to move your lights around to illuminate that from that point of view. If you start moving around with your camera and you change your point of view, the lights are going to affect your object differently. So we need to keep track of that. I'm not going to do rendering this time. I just want to set up the perspective and point of view that we like, that shows our object in its best view. And then from there, we start adjusting our lights and do rendering. So this will be step one in that process. So let's click on use custom size. You can do it by pixels. I usually do it by basically a paper size. So this is a relatively small object. So I'm going to pick 8.5 inches wide by 11 inches high. So when I do my final image, I know that when I print that, it'll be this full-size image that I've created. And right here, we can set up our resolution. So I do 300 DPI, which is a nice, comfortable size for this. So let's set that up in this point of view. So here is our paper size, and our object is down there in an axonometric view. So right here, we can start, if you go to fit, and there's our object fitting right in the page. So if you back off a little bit, it's like a little bit smaller. We can control this fit. So let's say I want to show this object, and this will be part of your assignment when you develop your 4 bottles. You need to come in with, I call it a 3/4 view. It's not really perspective, it's just a view of our object. And we can move this around and pick the best view. So maybe I do want to emphasize that cap, so I could lean more towards the cap. Maybe I want to have more of a down view down here, maybe a little bit more of the side to show the detail. So you can kind of pick. So I'm just going to pick a kind of a comfortable 3/4 view about here. I'm going to leave this in this shaded view with our lines on so we can see this geometry. So when you present this to the rest of the group, we can all look at it and talk about how you built it. We can see the edges and the radiuses. So this is a good point of view. I'm going to make some modifications on that as we go along. Let's go back to fit. So if I do, let's say I like this point of view, I'm going to leave this here. So if I go to fit, it's a little tight top to bottom. So as you're over the fit tool, right click, and you can go to your zoom options. Here it's at 0. So it is fitting top to bottom. We could back off and maybe make, let's try 5%. Deselect that, go back to fit, and it pulls it in a little bit. So now you have a little bit of space. So this is nice and comfortable to fit on here. So if we save this out right now as a JPEG, the blue grid will be there, and our points are on, and our lines are on, which is fine. So in this situation, I'm going to turn off the grid. And up here under display, you can deselect show axis and deselect show grid. So now we have a nice white page for this image to sit on. I'm also going to go under display and go to our display options. And now we've been working with points on because it's been very helpful to see that. We can leave them on, there's nothing wrong with that, but I'm going to turn that off for this image so it's nice and clean. Okay, so there's our object with just the lines on. So this is a nice way to show this form. And to show where all our surfaces are, we can see our parting line, and we can see our two objects. I just used white and gray so I can differentiate between the closure and the bottle. So right now we can save this as a JPEG, but we can also save this point of view for the future. Down here at the bottom, we have our view area. It's kind of hidden, so I'm just going to bring that out. So we can, let's say this view is all set up and we like it for 8.5 by 11. So if we just do this plus sign here, this view 1, and click over here, it has now saved this point of view. So let's move this and I'll show you how that works. So if we move this around and do other things to it, it's changed. I can always come back. I got view 1. I can label this for this one, however you want to label, axonometric, 3/4 view, or whatever. So if I click under here, it'll automatically go back to that view. So we have now saved this point of view for an 8.5 by 11. Like if I change the 8.5 by 11 to another size, and I click on this view, it probably will not sit nice. We have to make adjustments for that size. This is good. So we have this all ready to go. So I'm just going to tuck that back down here. So what we can do with this is we can save this out as a JPEG image. So go to File, and we'll go to Export Image, and you go to JPEG. And I'm just going to put this here. So I've been calling this the violet bottle because of that original color rendering. Let's just call this, let's call it view 1. So now we have that as a JPEG image. I leave the backgrounds white, so it's nice and clean, because quite often I'll bring this into Photoshop and I might crop this really, really tight. And that's how I did my demonstration images for the assignment. I cropped this really tight and I put it next to the orthographic image. So I didn't need all this background. But I know approximately how big this is. This is ready to go. So we can also set up perspective in this area here. So if you go under, let's actually back up. I'm going to show you how to set up a perspective view. I'm just backing up so it gives us some room. I'm going to put the axis and the grid back on so we have a feeling for where we are. So there's our object. So now we can go under view and go to 2-point. Remember 3-point perspective and 2-point. We're going to go 2-point because we don't want that distortion, that keystoning. We want our vertical lines to be parallel to the edge of our paper or our field. So let's go to 2-point. And it went into this perspective mode. We can move this around and make adjustments here to set up a point of view, just like I did with the axonometric. But we have a more concise way of working with this. So we're going to go in and edit the cone of vision. So go under View, and come down here to Edit Cone of Vision. So click on that. And this dialog area will come up. So we have these 3 fields. We have 4. The one up at the top right, that's our view that we're looking at. These other views are the top, front, and side of the cone of vision and our object. So I'm up here on the top view, top left. So if I click in there, it'll be red. I'm going to work in here. So I'm going to, this is our cone. I'm just going to move that in. And you can see in our 3/4 view, it's moving in there. I can also adjust the cone of vision this way. So I'm trying to adjust how much distortion this perspective is going to create. So now I'm down here on the bottom right. I've clicked in this field and I'm looking from the side view. You can see our object right there. I'm going to bring this eye level down. I'm going to look more into the bottle. You'll see how this comes together when I move in closer. Now I'm going to go back up to the top view, top left. I'm going to bring that in a little bit closer. So it's quite a bit of perspective. So this takes a little bit of back and forth. This went a little bit higher. That's not bad. I think I'm going to reduce this cone of vision so we have less perspective, but I'm going to get closer. So let's come back over here. I'm going to go back down the bottom right, which is the right view. And I'm just going to grab that handle, move this down a little. So I'm looking into that front face and less of the top. So moving my eye level down. I'm going to show just a slight bit of the top there. So let's go on this top view. I'm going to move it in closer. I want it to fit nice into this proportion. A little tight. Now I'm going to go back to the side view, and I'm going to pull that up just a little bit to look on the top of the cap slightly. So this looks pretty good. So what we can do is go back under view, and you can see edit cone of vision is selected. We want to deselect that. So just click on that, and we'll go back to our initial interface. You can see this line work is starting to get kind of odd looking because it's in perspective. So we can adjust that. So let's put this into a full shader mode. So now I can do some last minute manipulations here. I'm going to take this little hand tool. I'm just going to move this around, kind of get it nice and centered. So now I have a little bit more space, top and bottom. When I do my ultimate rendering, I'm going to put some reflections and a floor and things like that. So this is a nice point of view. I'm emphasizing the front. So when I ultimately do the final lighting on this should look pretty good. So it's a little bit of a 3/4 view. I'm seeing a little bit of the top of the closure. This is subjective. It depends on your object, what it looks like. You can do this from the left or the right. I always do my points of view from this side. It might be because I'm left-handed, I don't know, but I'm always comfortable looking at these objects from this point of view. So again, you can take this and we can save this. Now, I'm not doing fit because I'm controlling all of that by working with the cone of vision. So I like this point of view. It gives me a little bit of space around there. So if we bring up our view area, I can now save this. This is view 2. Again, we can label this. And if I select here, it does that in and out thing. So I know that that is now saved. So it's good. So I can go back up here to view 1. That was the axonometric that I had set up in that point of view. And now I can click on view 2 and automatically that perspective. So these are nice and saved and ready to go. So I'm just going to put that back down here. Okay, so again, I can save this out. I mean, you can save it out in any one of these modes. You can do it in wireframe if you wanted to. This interactive shader has the lines on. So let's say I like this interactive shader. I can go back and the lines are all broken up. It just does that for some reason when you do this mode set up. We can adjust that. So let's go to display options. Here's all these image options we have at the top. So right now we're selected on this interactive shader. I can control some of these things. So I'm going to deselect edges of surfaces. So it just eliminated those lines and it's in this kind of even shader. So the highlights are less intense than the shadows. So if I like that preference, I could show that. So I can control some of these things in here. I usually leave this on because I use that as my working mode. So in perspective, I would probably use this shader. I mean, I could render this right now. My lighting isn't really set up. Let's take a look at what rendering. It'll probably look very similar to the shader. So there I have some of the lighting set up that we all did initially, those 3 lights that we set up. When we get into rendering, we're going to move those lights around and set up a really nice dramatic point of view with lighting and materials. You could save that as a rendering right now. We know it's 300 DPI, so it'll be a nice strong image. This interactive shader is very similar. And again, I can turn off the blue grid. And I could save this out as a JPEG. Okay, so that's setting up a point of view and perspective. So that's the end of this tutorial, and we'll lead that into doing a full rendering.